Ciao. We travel a lot. We drive a car, we ride a train, we fly a plane sometimes. When you do a calculation how expensive that is to travel with each of these means of transportation, you might come into conclusion that a train might be usually cheaper than a car. That sounds reasonable. But do you know that actually airlines might earn less money for flying us on a flying chair than we would spend riding a car or riding a train? So there are measures for that actually. And me being a huge AV geek, I like to look them up, and particularly publicly traded airlines provide with such data. So this way I can analyze that and show to you new way of looking at an airline. So let me take you through with my way of looking at different kind of businesses that might explain how the airlines operate as well. In the end, that's going to boil down into a single most important equation in airline economics. Let's begin. Let's start with an example that is probably close to everybody's heart. Let's see a business model of a restaurant or a hair salon. There will be a chair or a table at each of those venues, and there will be an average revenue that each of those tables or chairs is generating. Those assets will not be occupied all the time. We need to consider that. Then, there is usually more than one table or a chair. So let's scale the business and multiply the revenue times the number of tables or chairs. That's how we come up with a revenue that a venue can generate. Average revenue for one table or chair times the utilization times the scale of the business. So number of chairs, number of tables. Let's use the same way of thinking and analyze a different kind of business. Let it be mining oil or Bitcoin. Let's also break down the revenue the business is generating. So in both cases, mining will be done by rigs, a machinery that performs the act. There will be an average revenue from one rig. Of course, maintenance time will be involved. So the same way, utilization might be also considered. This simply will be a percentage of time the rigs will be operating with full efficiency. And then, as you might imagine, there will be a number of rigs performing the mining. Let's do one more. This will be a business of a kind of Netflix or Facebook. There is a very useful metric for those kind of businesses. This is average revenue per paid user. It's easy to imagine how the Netflix subscription is this average revenue. You can also consider yourself being paid user of Facebook, but it is not you who pays for the service, it's the advertisers. Then the next two metrics are going to be combined, because with Facebook we have a percentage of the population of the entire globe signed up, so we can consider that, and also the population of the globe. It's usually expressed as monthly active users, and this will differ from business to business. Let's summarize the implication of those examples. We can see that the revenue is generated by some production unit. This will be a table, a rig, a user. We have a measure of operating proficiency those businesses are operated with, the utilization. And then we have a scale of the business. To me, airlines can be explained the same way. Let's have a look at the equation I mentioned at the beginning. It is comprised of three specific measures. First of all, there is revenue per revenue passenger kilometer, RRPK. This is a revenue that each passenger brings to the airline divided by the number of kilometers he travels. Then there is the load factor. This is the occupancy of the seats in an aircraft. Finally, the scale is described by available seat kilometers. Let's go through that using a transatlantic example. Each of us would be very happy to travel from London Heathrow to New York JFK. That would be awesome. we would be covering the distance of 5,554 kilometers, and let's say we would pay $500 for this pleasure. This way, it is easy to calculate the revenue passenger kilometers. This is the distance, 5,554 kilometers, times one seat, which is flying across the Atlantic in the example. 5,554 revenue passenger kilometers. Now, to get RRPKs, revenue per one revenue passenger kilometer, we just take the price of the ticket and divide it by the RPKs. In the end, we get about 9 cents per revenue passenger kilometer. This alone would be a very good payout for the airline. Now, you won't be traveling on one flying chair alone. It's going to be on board a plane. Here comes the British Airways Dreamliner. This plane seats 214 passengers across 3 different classes. You can see that on the seat mat below. If you were the only one customer flying with British Airways on this particular flight, it would translate to load factor of just below 0.5%. That's a really poor result, and I don't expect any airline to fly across the Atlantic with one passenger only. But let's calculate what would the result be for the airline. So let's back up for a second to the block diagram. Now see that the revenue per revenue passenger kilometer, the production unit output, is important measure. But then the load factor, the utilization, is also a very important measure. One cannot be sacrificed to achieving the other. That's why, to describe an airline, you can use both of them combined. This is how you get revenue per available seat kilometer, RASK. That's arguably one of the best measures to describe an airline. Let's finish up with the example. Now we can see how much RASK we can generate with this particular case. 9 cents that we got from this example, combined with load factor of below 0.5%, equals to 0.04 of a cent. That's a very poor result. Only after using a load factor that is an average for an airline in 2019, we can come up with around 7 cents of RASK. And this is more of an acceptable result for an airline. If you're curious how this measure can look for different airlines, I've got a short chart for you. So here you can see in euro cents how much RASK those airlines generated across a few last years. If you want to see extended version of this kind of comparison, let me know in the comments. Nevertheless, you can see that between 3 and 5 cents is somewhat of an average result for those kind of airlines, at least in the past few years. Now we can see how simple the equation becomes for an airline. Arguably the most important equation in airline economics. I hope you learned something today and enjoyed yourself while watching, because I certainly did. If you're a geek like me, hit the like button and show me that you appreciate the content. That's all for now. Ciao.